Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a Super Bowl episode of Cuz You Don't Know Football. Guys, I'm excited, but I'm sad. But I'm excited, but I'm sad. But I'm excited, but I'm sad. Listen, this game's gonna be crazy. But I always get sad at the end of the football season because look how far we've kept. Like we have been talking about this all year long. We've been doing this. We've been going. We went through so much, together. So now that it's coming to an end for this year, you know, it hits a little different. But I'm expecting a crazy game. You know what I mean? So of course, for those who don't know, I don't know how you don't know. Now I'm saying I'm also saying the postseason, the regular season and postseason record. I'm about to say. So we have the 17-2 Kansas City Chiefs versus the 17-3 Philadelphia Eagles. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, the only reason the difference why the Eagles played one more game is because the Chiefs got a bye week because they were the number one seed. The Eagles did not get a bye week because they were not the number one seed. You see how that worked out? That's the only reason that's different. But today, ladies and gentlemen, we are winging it. We are winging it. Um, so it's hard during this time of the year because I only really have two teams to talk about. Like I have two teams to talk about. We got to stretch this out. I'm gonna do the best I can with it, but this is probably gonna be a shorter episode. But we're gonna talk about some things. Um, so first and foremost, we're probably gonna talk about two things. No, we're gonna talk about three topics. I'm gonna give you the list of teams of how I would rank the postseason teams for this year. How I really feel as though they were this year, not projecting to next year, but how I thought they were this year. I'm gonna tell you uh six teams that I think are going to miss the playoffs that made the playoffs this year, and then we'll just break down the game and we'll go from there. So starting with the team. So this is just teams that how they lost if they because sometimes just because a team lost in the first round, they might have played just a really good team. So that's kind of why I thought that they were there. Um, but I'll probably more or less put them in tiers, and then I'll fix it up. Um, but just going to play the bottom tiers. The bottom tier, I had Tampa Bay. I mean, Tampa Bay really could sit there by themselves. Tampa Bay, Denver, and the Chargers. Tampa Bay, I feel like they were in the playoffs only because they were in the NFC South. They were in any other division, they wouldn't have been in the playoffs. But that division is just terrible. It's gonna be bad next year too, so we might see him again, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't know. Um, Denver, I just think Denver is young. This was supposed to be their rebuild year. Excuse me, their rebuild year. They're gonna be great. They're gonna be fine. I really want to see what Bo Nix does next year, having a year where everybody knew. I mean, now that they're gonna now know how he works, what he's good at, what he's not good at. That's why they always call it a sophomore slump because the league's gonna figure it out. So I want to see what happens with them. And the Chargers. Now, my problem with the Chargers is the same thing I've always said. This is a Super Bowl roster. Okay. Which is exactly why I keep trying to tell y'all Justin Herbert is the most overrated quarterback in the league because this roster could easily have been in the Super Bowl with any other quarterback. Well, not any other quarterback. Any of the quarterbacks that are elite. Any of them. So the fact that Justin Herbert keeps getting pushed into an elite conversation, it's like, well, why y'all keep pushing him into an elite conversation and he's not an elite quarterback? Is that hard to comprehend? That's not rude. Like he lost to an inferior roster, an inferior team against a quarterback who he's supposed to be better than. He lost. Y'all be saying I'm mean and rude, but I don't see it. That's all I'm saying. Doesn't matter. My mother loves me. So so that's the bottom tier. So the next tier above that, I would probably be going Minnesota. Minnesota, I'll say right above that. We'll give them their tier. As I said, we might fix it up along the way, but Minnesota, I think there's just teams that are better than them that I don't think are in the same tier as them, you know? So Minnesota. The Vikings were there. So then I would probably go. Now this is just this year. I'm not talking about anything for next year. This is just how they were this year. I would go the Houston Texans. Next I would go to Houston Texans. And the Rams. That they would be in that same thing. So the thing about the Texans, and the reason why I talk about the Vikings, we'll talk about that later. It's just not much to talk about there, in my opinion. I really like the rosters of the Houston Texans and the Rams. And if they were healthy, both of them could have been really scary. And I think being in the playoffs, both of them, there's teams that wanted to avoid playing both of them. And I think they're two teams that are going to be good going into next year as well. Like you can pretty much book it. You know what I mean? They're going to be good. Now we're starting to get to some elite ones. So then I'm going to go the Green Bay Packers. They're pretty much I would pretty much put them in that same tier. Packers being the youngest team in the playoffs, you know, just make sure I got you. Okay. Because y'all don't know I just checked this to make sure I was recording. Y'all don't know how the pain of filming a whole segment and you forgot to press record or you deleted it. I've done both. So you just gotta check. I don't know, y'all. I got scars. So Green Bay being the youngest roster in the playoffs, I expect them to just get better. Love their quarterback too. I call him Lamar Jackson light. Jordan Love, Lamar Jackson light. Okay, so now we can do we'll go then we'll go Washington. Then we'll go Washington. Washington vastly they overperformed. They overachieved. You know what I mean? They this is a very Andrew Luck giving type situation. If any of you watched Andrew Luck take the Colts with a kind of bare roster to the AFC Championship game, watching Jane Daniels do that with this roster, it reminds me eerily of that. He's special, but they have a lot of work to do to that roster. But they were a team all year. That he got figured out a little bit, then he rebounded, and I expect him to do the same thing. And I'm very excited to watch them going into next year as well. Oh, I forgot Pittsburgh. I will just put them there. I don't care. Pittsburgh. We'll see what happens with them. That'll be interesting. I don't have much to say about them right now. We'll talk more about that too. So then I would put all in the same category. I would put Detroit, Baltimore, and Buffalo. All three, and I say that because all three of them, Baltimore, Detroit, and Buffalo, all of them need another pass rusher. Now, their offenses, their quarterbacks, the play of the team as a whole really shades or it really covers up that need for them. But seriously, like they need pass rushers. And every time I go back and forth with people about that, and I don't understand why people don't understand, you have to go get the other team's quarterback. You need pass rushers. You have to have pass rushers. Now, Detroit, Aiden Hutchinson will be back, but I think you need two, in my opinion, especially watching them lose all of their coordinators. They definitely need another pass rusher, in my opinion, more than the rest of them. But Baltimore, they could finally get Patrick Mahomes and dethrone him with if they really go get a pass rusher. And Buffalo, you could be saying the same thing. They could honestly get it done. And oh, by the way, Miles Garrett just requested a trade. Just saying, everything, all things considered, Miles Garrett did just request a trade. So that pass rusher is there. So we'll see who does. We'll see who steps up. But whatever they're asking for him, I would be willing to pay it. That's that. Um, And then, of course, that again brings us to our Super Bowl teams, who I do think are the best two teams in the NFL. And I predicted this Super Bowl back in like week 5. Okay, so I'm not even going to go too much in terms of bigging myself up, but there's been some things on this show that we've been saying like way earlier than everybody else about what was going to happen, what the season was going to do, whether it would be last year where we said that Detroit was going to go to the NFC Championship game. We predicted that. People said we were crazy. Or watching Washington this year saying this could be a RG3 type season. When we talked about Jaden Daniels in the summer, me and Mike, people said I was crazy there. And then basically saying like people were like, how can you predict who's going to be in the Super Bowl? It's just been 5 weeks, just the first quarter of the season. Well, those teams are in the Super Bowl, so again, so these two are the best two teams in the NFL. I've basically been able to see that all year, and I'm really excited for that game. We'll get there. Okay, so we got 6 teams. So, but let me say it like this. So every year, on average, there's 6 teams that miss the playoffs that made the playoffs the year before. That's on average. So sometimes it's 7, sometimes it's 5, but on average, it's about 6 teams. I'm gonna give you 6 teams that I'm telling you right now. We gotta watch the off season stuff, but these are my candidates for who's gonna miss the playoffs next year, and I'm giving you 6. Tampa Bay. I can't expect the NFC South to be that bad again. So first on that list, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I can't expect the NFC South to be that bad. I expect somebody to come up and, figure something out along the way. Pittsburgh, the Steelers. Uh the Bengals are going to be back. I think they're going to be back. They're going to figure some stuff out. Pittsburgh, they got some turmoil. I don't know if George Pickens really wants to be there. I don't know if he likes anybody. He doesn't seem to be too keen on anything. He's kind of always been like that. Not my business. But I'm not feeling it right now. I'll say that. The Minnesota Vikings. Listen, every year there's a Cinderella team that kind of gets in, and we didn't see it coming. That's what I love about the NFL. I think this is the Vikings. I think the expectations for them were to be about 4 wins or something like that, and they went. They only lost 2 games in the regular season, but you started to see, okay, this is what they're trying to do. Where I'm expecting Brian Flores to be moving on. They now with Sam Darnold probably not going to be resigned. I kind of expect them to come back to earth and stop overachieving. So that's one, two, three. All right, I gave you 3. The Denver Broncos. And it doesn't even mean that means that they're worse. They snuck in. Um, they weren't the scariest team of the teams that were possibly the last team that was going to make the playoffs. So they got in. It's been a great story. I think they take a step back. I think Bo Nix is probably going to hit a sophomore slump of a certain degree. But that doesn't mean that they're worse. It just means it just goes that way. So that's 4. It gets hard, guys. It really gets hard. All right. Here's one that y'all not gonna see this one. You gonna call me crazy. The Detroit Lions. I know I just picked them last year for the NFC Championship game. The Detroit Lions are gonna miss the playoffs next year. Here's why. The roster is going to be back. The head coach is going to be back. That's not the issue. When you lose your offensive coordinator and your defensive coordinator, even just one, if you lose your offensive coordinator, that's the culture of your offense. You see, the quarterback, when they're making adjustments, when they're going through stuff, they're not talking to the head coach. They're talking to the offensive coordinator. When teams are trying to figure out how can we exploit this matchup, they don't say this is what I'm saying on the field to the head coach. They say it to the offensive coordinator. Defensively, same way. What they're saying, they don't report to the head coach. They talk to the defensive coordinator. That's what the defense does. So the culture of the philosophy of how you're playing defense, the culture that you have, why you're doing this, why you're not doing this. The person that runs that are the coordinators. They lost the offensive and defensive coordinator. That's going to be hard to replace. So Detroit, I'm sorry. Ooh, and all right, so legitimately, so I was looking between the Chargers and the Commanders. I just think Hardball year two, they're gonna be pretty good. If it's either Hardball is able to change this franchise or the Chargers really have something wrong with them. So for that reason, I don't expect that to go that way. I think the Commanders are the other team, and I'm not sure of that. It could be five teams, but I said I'd give you six, so I'm giving you a six. So it's a horror five. Pause. It's a strong five. It's a strong five and a tentative six. So the Commanders are the team that I also think probably will miss the playoffs. It's likely only because they got a lot of work to do on this roster, man. They got a lot of work to do on this roster, man. And traditionally speaking, um, which we call them the Redskins, the Commanders, the Washington football team, however you want to articulate them, they haven't been too keen on fixing problems properly. So we'll see how this goes, but they have a lot to work to do. That's all I'm saying. Jaden Daniels, you cannot walk into next season with the same roster for Jaden Daniels. He's not going to be able to overcome it for 2 years back to back, especially when the league is looking at him and saying, "I have to stop him." I have to figure him out. So the league's going to make it harder for him. He needs help, just like that. So, and he got a lot of holes. So that's that. All right, let's break down this matchup a little bit. Let's get into this Super Bowl game, the big game. So when I look at like the matchups of this game, that's the thing about this game that interests me between the Eagles and the Colts. Eagles and the Colts. I'm sorry, y'all. Y'all know I love my Colts, but they should. I'm sorry, that was a Freudian slip. They always on my mind. Uh, let's start that over. Cut that part out. The matchups for this game, I'm very excited about with the Eagles and the Chiefs. There's a lot of matchups, and um, it's no mystery. I've been telling you guys for a long time. I definitely feel like the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. I definitely feel like the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. However, when I look at the matchups, man, the Eagles have a lot of matchups that favor them in this game. So when you talk about the Chiefs offensive line having to block the Eagles defensive line, this is the most talented defensive line that they've gone against all playoffs. This is the most talented one. So this is the best of what they have seen. When you talk about now, if we talk about vertical speed. Now the Chiefs have a clear cut advantage in terms of vertical speed against the Eagles cornerbacks. But if I'm looking at the Eagles cornerbacks against those wide receivers, I would still say the Eagles have that matchup. Linebackers, I don't really get into too much because it doesn't really move the needle too much. But the Chiefs do have better linebackers. Um, When you go to the other side of the ball, the Eagles' offensive line, Eagles probably the best offensive line, and the Chiefs' defensive line is 90% 90% Chris Jones. I mean, they have George Karlaftis, and I mean they generate a good rush, but the Eagles' offensive line should dominate this this uh this game. The Eagles wide receivers against the the Chiefs secondary. I would still go Eagles. I would still go Eagles. And I think the Chiefs number one wide receiver, the Chiefs number one cornerback is a very good one. But when we talk about a game plan on what's going to have to happen, I definitely feel as though they're going to say y'all going to have to either take away Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, or because that's the matchup we're going to have to lean on. And I think they need for them to do that. Like they're hoping that they can do that, and I'm not too sure that they can. That's I think it'd be a great matchup. It'd be great to watch. And then if when you go to the running back situation, Saquon Barkley, it's a clear edge against the Chiefs running backs. You know what I mean? I like and I'm more of a fan of having multiple running backs, but you can't deny what Saquon Barkley has provided. Um, when you go quarterback, of course, I'm going Pat all day. But the last time that they played in the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts statistically outplayed him. I mean, he did make the mistake, but if you look at the stats of the Super Bowl in 2023, he outplayed Patrick Mahomes. That has a lot to do with what that game has a lot to do with what holds up his reputation today. So you can't take that away. So the thing that so also in terms of head coaches, I mean Nick Sirianni, Andy Reid, I think y'all get that. Like that's not even close. So in terms of all of the matchups, head-to-head matchups, the Eagles have a lot more favorable matchups than the Chiefs. The thing about the Chiefs, they're really good in all the places you really want them to be good at. The Chiefs are really good at all the places that you really want the Chiefs to be good at. Their pass rush, I don't know how they're generating a pass rush because it's not like they have. Well, I mean, I know they blitz. They're a high blitz team. They blitz a lot. So they get a great pass rush. They get you off your spot. You know what I mean? Their offensive line is very good. You know, they got the best quarterback in the league. Um they got the best head coach in the league. And Andy Reid is phenomenal off of bye weeks. He's like I'm not saying he's undefeated, but he's definitely in the 90 percentile, 90th percentile. He's winning 90% of the games that he's coming off of bye weeks, and he's had that advantage his whole career. So the man's good at that. Situationally, man, the Chiefs are phenomenal. They've always been great situationally. They haven't been like putting themselves where they're blowing people out. They're figuring out the little tweak at the right time to exploit something to put them ahead, and they've been good at that. So that's the Chiefs' whole thing. And when you think about it like that, well, everything that I said about the matchups and the Eagles having all of these matchups, now you can see where it's like, yo, the Chiefs have all of the adjustments. They have all of the adjustments to do that. And I love the Chiefs. What I like about the Chiefs roster, earlier in the year they had a whole bunch of injuries, so they had to bring on multiple running backs, had to bring on multiple wide receivers. Well, now that wide receiver group, it's not top heavy, but that number two and number three wide receiver situation, it favors them against anybody they play. So their wide receiver like group is not great, but it's effective against anybody they're playing. Their running back group having three running backs, depending on who's got the hot hand, what kind of style they need to play, how many yards they need to do, like all of that goes in, and they have that versatility. They're very versatile. I think it's scary. It's scary to watch a team that has won back-to-back Super Bowls be bad at something, be worse at something, and people can't exploit it, and then by the end of it, having that be more of a strength further up on thing. I'm not saying that's their strengths of their team, but have that be up more on their strength list than when they started this season. That's scary, you know. So yeah, like I said, this is going to be great. So we're going to talk after the Super Bowl. We're definitely going to talk after the Super Bowl. And that's going to basically conclude the season, and that'll be the season finale of Cuz You Don't Know Football, you know. So guys, this has been a great season. I appreciate all the love and all the support. Man, we've gone, and this is just not now I'm not even talking about football. I'm just talking about the podcast. Like we've gone this season, so like this year, and this is just me being like honest. We've gone this year, we started with about like about like 400 followers, right? So we go through the year. We probably got 400 followers in the last like 2 months. You know, it just grew. Like all of the likes that we've had, the views on the podcast. Our highs last season for just on views on our reels was like 50,000 might have been the highest. It could have been 60,000 views. Um, Now we're more or less repeatedly getting 100,000 views, 200,000 views, 90,000 views. One of them was like 400,000 views. You know what I mean? So this has grown in a way that I'm like, I am humbled by this whole experience, man. Um, and I really want this part of this to be like in our one of the reels that I want to make. I really want this to be a part of it because I really appreciate all of this, man. I couldn't have hoped. You know, this started off with just like a conversation about football because, you know, I always talk about football with people. You know, like so like what you see week to week here, it's exactly what it looks like when nobody's here. I mean, when the cameras aren't here, you know, we don't write anything down. We don't practice or rehearse anything. This is off the cuff. Everything, think about that. Everything you've seen has been off the cuff. Even on shows like on like First Take or The Herd or any other First Things First, any other debate show, there's a certain level of rehearsal that goes into what they're doing. Me and all of my co-hosts, when we talk, this just happens organically. And all we do is just say, these are the topics we're going to talk about. We don't talk about what we're going to say. I have no idea what they're going to say. They have no idea what I'm going to say. And we just go with it. Um, so yeah, man. I appreciate all of this, man. I love y'all. And thank y'all for making my dreams come true, man. So to have the like, I feel like the heavyweight champion that I get to talk like from what I was doing before. I get to talk about football, and I would do that for free. And now we're starting to get paid from that, you know. So this has been great, man. This is amazing. You know what I mean? So that's that. So with that said, once again, you can catch our full episodes on Spotify. You can catch our full episodes on YouTube. You can catch the reels on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. And you gotta check out the Facebook group, the Cuz You Don't Know Football Facebook group. We in there, we be talking about topics, man. We cut it up in there. Once again, guys, I just want to say thank you for everything. But unfortunately, I got to tell y'all, cuz you don't know football. I'm your boy Reek. And just like Martin said, I'ma see you when I see you. Peace.